Well, now we know what a carbon tax looks like, starting at $23 a tonne and raising around $24 billion. The Gillard government is now locked in a battle to both sell the tax and to ensure its own survival. And South Australia, with its heavy industries and coal-fired power stations, will be a key focus. Tonight we'll hear from the head of Alinta, the company which owns the Port Augusta power stations, and what it says it means for the future of the state's electricity supply. But what of small businesses? How do they fare? We start with a 120-year-old family company that may well be the last of its kind in Australia.
Well, it means everything to me. This business has been here longer than me. It's always been part of my life. You know, it's very much something that I'm connected to. It's part of me, it's what I do.
John Bennett came to work in the family pottery business at McGill in 1974, following his father and his grandfather before him. He thinks the changing times have now made this business unique.
I believe that we're the only pottery of our kind left in Australia now that make pots, or has the potential to make pots on such a big scale.
This is a good, iconic manufacturing business, the last one of its kind in the country. Their margins are tight.
John Bennett says that's because of cheap imported pots, which he argues have spelt the end of other local manufacturers. But it also means he now makes things other people can't, like these chimney pots designed specifically to suit old homes in Sydney. And these filtration pipes for Melbourne. And these ridge pickets to restore one of the thousands of buildings damaged in the Christchurch earthquake.
I'm glad that I can be part of it. And it's, you know, it's interesting that, you know, there's no one else around the place that can do it apart from me.
But now critics of the federal government's carbon tax fear small businesses such as this one face a seismic shift of their own.
This business is the canary in the carbon tax maze. It's symbolic of what will happen to hundreds of thousands of businesses across the country. They have to compete with imports. If they are pushed over the edge or pushed into taking in imports in order to compete with other businesses, then that means jobs will be lost. And the worst thing is we'll end up exporting those emissions to dirtier industries overseas. That doesn't make sense to me.
Let's remember, small business, like all of us, has something to lose when it comes to climate change. We know that climate change poses grave risks to our economy and to our environment, and we know unless we put a price on pollution, pollution will continue to rise and we won't get the incentive to invest in clean energy and clean technology.
Nick XENOPHON argues the shortcomings of the carbon tax for small businesses are highlighted here. The tax directly targets the top 500 polluters. Obviously not this place. The federal government says the money raised goes back to either compensate households, the companies directly targeted, or in stimulus for new technology. Nick XENOPHON says small businesses, particularly energy-intensive ones, virtually miss out.
Once their power prices go up 20, 30, 50% or more, then that makes it even more difficult for them. And it's a scheme that will involve massive revenue churn. If you churn billions of dollars, you'll burn billions of dollars. And the problem is that small businesses like John's just won't be insulated from this at all.
But the federal government argues it's increased the instant tax write-off to $6,500, and that will help small businesses. And also, they can access grants for clean technology.
Eligible firms can apply through our clean technology program, which the Prime Minister announced, which does enable people to invest in lower emissions technology and clean energy.
So John Bennett might be able to buy new kilns and so on with a grant from this fund?
He may be, and obviously I can't comment on whether he's eligible or not, but what I can say is this is what we put on the table for manufacturing. But I mean, let's be frank, we're not pretending that there's a cost-free way to deal with climate change. If there were, someone would have found it.
The kilns are worth $50,000 each. He needs to replace those. The extruder is worth $750,000. $6,500 isn't going to go very far.
There is, however, another side of the business, one which actually keeps Bennett's afloat, and that's supplying processed clay to other industries. John Bennett's biggest customer for that clay is Nearstar, the lead smelter in Pottery. It's also one of the top 500 polluters targeted by the carbon tax.
And they use the clay to plug the tap holes on their blast furnace. It's a good cheap clay for them, and that's what they use, and that smelter has used it for the last 30 years.
The government did the right thing by giving Nearstar an appropriate compensation package. That was the right thing to do. The irony is that Nearstar is one of John's biggest customers, but he won't get any protection.
Well, you have to make judgments about where you provide assistance, and we've done it on the basis of, first, those companies which will have the greatest liability, the greatest costs under this package, and have a limited ability to pass on the price.
John Bennett believes action is necessary to tackle climate change, but he isn't convinced by the carbon tax. His experience goes to the heart of the challenge now facing the Gillard government.
Do you feel any more comfortable? Are you any better informed? Are you any more reassured than you were a week ago?
No. No, I feel the same. I don't know where I stand personally with this business, with this carbon tax.
If you can't convince the John Bennetts of this world, what happens?
Well, as I said, we'll have to keep speaking with people, but ultimately we also have to do what's right for the country.